Well, speaking of billionaires who claim to be doing something one way, but they're really doing it another way, we do have the clip from the Rogan podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, regarding debanking with Mr. Andreessen, who, as you will see, wasn't being completely honest.
For example, with this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like, there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent new competition,
Well, you could see that he had to think about that for a second. But what is he doing again? Oh, yeah, right. They're preventing us from completely taking over the world.
I love how he says it's like it's her. He makes it sound like it's her personal, like, Gestapo. It's just ridiculous to me that he's talking about it this way, because I am by no means a Liz Warren fan, but that is one of the things that she's done that's really good. So it's just it's just weird to me. This is so strange.
Oh, let's see what else this Looney Tune has to say.
Startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just like terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything in financial services.
Can you give me an example?
Well, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from, is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee
for what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of your to kick them out of your bank.
What?
You're not allowed to have
What if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
No,
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Can you tell me what the person that you know did? What they said that got them debanked?
Oh, well, I mean, David Horowitz is a right wing. He's pro-Trump. I mean, he said all kinds of things. He's been very anti-Islamic terrorism. He's been very worried about migration, all these things.
So I like how he throws in, well, he's very anti-Islamic terrorism, aka he's very pro-Israel, and he's getting.
I still don't understand why he's claiming this, and hopefully Joe Rogan takes like 5 seconds to do some research, but I don't understand. So, and we're supposed to believe that people lose their banking privileges just because of their political beliefs?
That does happen, but it's not the CFPB who does it. So, because I think based on what I know about this situation is that he personally has had several businesses that basically he's scamming, you could say, his customers, and the CFPB came in and stopped that. So I think he has a personal vendetta against the CFPB because it prevents him from doing the things that he wants to do to make money. And now even then he talks about, he's conflating agencies. He's like, these are what these agencies do. Now, all these agencies do different things. The CFPB is specifically there to protect consumers. And I've read numerous people like Lee Fang came out and said, no, the CFPB actually prevented the debanking of folks who, were on the right or the ultra Christian nationals, these kinds of people. They actually stepped in and said, no, you can't be doing that. So it's actually the complete opposite of what he's saying. And I think what he's doing is, he's a very smart guy. People have come out to defend him, saying that he actually conflated two different things and he misspoke here. But I don't think he misspeaks. He's like one of the top venture capitalists in the country. There's no way that he's doing this on accident. And also, to your point, Steve, I think even Joe Rogan's sort of follow-up questions kind of had him taken aback. Joe Rogan, basically all he said was like, what do you mean by that? Give me an example of that. And he's already kind of on the back foot a little bit.
All right, we'll finish it out.
They debanked him for that.
Yeah, they debanked it. So you get kicked out of your bank account. You get kicked out of you can't do credit card transactions. But by the way, you can't.
How is that legal?
Well, exactly. So this is the thing, and then you go in this thing of like, well, this is where the government and the companies get intertwined. Back to your fascism point, which is there's a constitutional amendment that says the government can't restrict your speech, but there's no constitutional amendment that says the government can't debank you, right? And so if they can't do the one thing, then they do the other thing, and then they don't have to debank you. They just have to put pressure on the private company banks to do it. And then the private company banks do it because they're expected to. But the government gets to say, we didn't do it.
Do you think Rogan is under a certain amount of obligation to at least be able to question his guests when they bring up certain topics like this that clearly he was not versed in very well?
I mean, I don't know Rogan at all personally, or I don't know how his brain really works, but I do know that he does ask. I mean, I think those are pretty good follow-up questions to say, hey, give me an example of what you mean by debanking. And he, came up with basically an example that didn't apply, right? He's talking about like Kanye and all these other things that doesn't make any sense. Like Kanye wasn't, I don't think he was even really in that situation. But I do think that Rogan is in this kind of sphere where he feels so, kind of abandoned by the people who he once kind of aligned with. And this is, he's kind of in this world now. If you're in that ecosystem, you start to really believe what these guys are saying. And you believe that it's a good thing. And also Rogan is, I mean, what did he make? Like $700 million from his Spotify deal. So he's not exactly working class, anymore. Or if he were considered at some point. But so I think, it's not, Rogan is not like a news. I mean, I give Rogan, a lot of passes in the sense it's like, it's not a news show. He's just having a conversation. And it's not on him to know the ins and outs of the CFPB, right? It's not technically his responsibility, but, I hope that he is then listening to other people to say, hey, Mark here was not making any sense at all, just to, I know there's other people around him that are smart that
I hope so. Because that's what I'm saying. Like, I have no problem with him not being a journalist because he's not a journalist. He doesn't claim to be a journalist. And I have no problem with him platforming all sorts of different people and different viewpoints. But when you're bringing on someone that has their own agenda, well, everyone does, to some extent. But you would think that you would at least question what they're saying and not necessarily support that like it's some sort of gospel.